Hey, it's Joe Farrow. Welcome back to Geek Toolkit. Now, it's been a while since I've been on, and a lot of that is because I moved out of a house and I moved into an apartment and then I moved into a brand new house. The exciting thing about that for my channel is I got to know what it's like to sell a house that had home automation in it, and I get to know what it's like to buy a brand new house that I'm really blessed to be able to get with home automation stuff that I got to pick out. So I could do a couple episodes here talking about these topics that I've always been interested in. And the thing is, when I went to go sell my house, I asked on a couple of forums and said, hey, I have a pretty large investment in home automation here. I had smart switches, I had tablets, I had lighting, I had garage door openers. There was all this stuff, not to mention the infrastructure stuff I had done, like running Cat6 cable throughout the entire house, the structured wired cabinet, stuff like that. So there are things that weren't quite home automation related, but that I did as part of my setup. And I wanted to know, like, was I going to get any of the money back? What did I need to do before I left? What did I have to reverse? And there were a lot of learnings from that. And so what I want to do in this video is focus on 6 of those learnings, basically just kind of break it down so that you have some realistic expectations when you go to sell a house, or if you're investing in your house, to know what it will be like if you have to sell later. Okay, let's go into number 1. Number 1 is to do a cost-benefit analysis. And this is basically how much time am I going to spend? How much money am I going to get back on any removals that you're thinking about doing or any retrofitting that you're thinking about doing? I'll give you an example. I had my light switches, I had 10 of them that were smart switches. They were $40 each. I was really concerned about that because I was thinking I spent a lot of money on light switches over the time. $400 in just the switches alone was a lot of money. But in the relation of a house sale and how much your time is worth when you're selling a house and how much time in general is worth, especially if you're trying to catch a good market. When you're in that situation, the house value can vary by tens of thousands of dollars in a week if you don't catch things right. So you got to ask yourself, do I want to be worried about $400 on light switches, or do I just want to get out of this house and not add any risk? What I mean by risk is every time you touch electrical, if something were to go wrong, say a ground wire doesn't get connected or a light doesn't work, that can end up being something that gets caught on inspection, and then you have to go back and forth with the buyer. They have to decide if they're going to waive it, or you have to decide if you're going to fix it or compensate them. It's just a mess. So it's to me, it was better. I didn't want to go spend the time. I didn't want to put the risk of having something like a ground wire not connected, which I had happened once in a previous sale. It just wasn't worth it. So you do the cost benefit analysis of what you're going to remove. At the end, what I'm saying is it's probably not worth it to rip that stuff out. I took all my switches. They were relay switches. I made sure to turn the relays on so that they acted like dumb switches, and then just left them there. To remove stuff, it's probably not going to be worth your time. The exception to this is going to be things like smart bulbs, and of course your actual server or hub or anything like that. So anything removable that's easy to take with you. But as far as like doing electrical work on the sale, probably not going to be worth your time. So this is where I kind of talk a little bit about what it's like to sell a house more than home automation. But I think this is super important because if you don't understand what it's like to sell a house, you may have ideas of what you're going to do when you go to sell that just aren't going to be actually viable when you go to sell. On the second house sale, the market was cooling off because interest rates were going up. The Feds in the United States had announced they were going to raise interest rates. We knew the market was going to cool. Now, when you're talking, again, these big numbers, when you hear something like that, that's what I mean. The timeline is not up to you at that point. You need to get out. And this could be for various reasons. And so anything that I was thinking, if I sold my house, I would go do all these. No, there was no time, and it wouldn't have been worth the time. And it definitely would not have been worth the risk in money. So that's just a real estate thing to be aware of, is that when you sell, it may not be up to you on the timeline. So don't do anything where you think, okay, I will have time to reverse this. It just, maybe you will, but you may not really want to spend that time at the end. The third thing to understand is what people look for in a home. I had this fantasy that I had invested in all these cool things for home automation, and that when I sold my home, that was going to be something that people would be really excited about. When people go to buy a home, these are some of the things that I've learned that they really look for. They look for major structural things like the roof. Is the roof going to need replacing? Water heater, is that going to need replacing? Stuff like that. So just the condition of the home. They look for the location. Is the home near their work? Is it near schools? Is it in a good community? Stuff like that. They look at things like, does it have enough bedrooms? The kitchen, oh my gosh, the kitchens are so important. Kitchens and bathrooms, are they things that they're going to have to be remodeled? Is it something that they find appealing? Is it going to be big enough for them? They look for the number of bedrooms. They look for, safety things for their kids. all of that. Then they'll look at things like the garage. Is the garage going to hold the number of vehicles they have? Is it going to, is it going to be in a place that they can, if they want to workshop, they look at the land, the backyard. Somewhere down the line, about 20 more items, they might look at technology. They're not buying your house because of your home automation. They don't care. It's just not a big deal. They can always add it later. And so it's just not, knowing that people are not going to value it is important, because I think when you get into the hobby and you get really passionate about it, you think everyone might appreciate it or love the convenience. And the reality is they're not looking at it when they're wanting to buy a house. It's just not even in their top 10. Now, what's really cool about this is in my next video where I talk about buying a house and what I looked for, and when I look for buying a new house, that changes on a new house because you can get it built into the house. And you can pick what technologies you want and stuff like that. But for selling a house or selling a house, you're basically selling a used house, it just wasn't on the list. Nobody we talked to cared. Just something to be aware of. Not everyone's as excited about home automation as we might be, and it's not on the list of things they're looking for. Okay, so I've kind of been, I guess, kind of a bummer of like talking about the negatives. Let's talk about some positives. So thing number 4 is, what are some really cool things that you can do with home automation that work really well when you're selling a home? Well, what I call removables are great. If you don't do a smart outlet that's built into the wall and you just do like the plug-in outlet adapter, those are amazing. You walk through, you pull them off, and you take them. They go with you. Same with smart bulbs. Smart bulbs are so cool. You just unscrew them, you throw in a cheap bulb. It takes a couple of minutes to do, especially if like an extension pole, which is what I used. I went through my entire house, pulled them all down, and I took all my smart bulbs with me. Smart bulbs for me, I was buying the Whiz lights, so I was paying about $25 if they were new. So taking about 8 or 9 of those down in a couple minutes, taking them with me, very, very handy. It worked really well. Another thing that's really cool is Wi-Fi stick-up cameras. If I had Arlo's, I was able to take that system with me. I don't particularly care for Arlo, but I'll talk about that probably in another video. But it was really nice to be able to just like pull those off and detach them. Very different than some of the cameras that I had where you would actually want to run it through your wall, like a PoE camera or something. If you had to run any wires or something and you weren't able to remove it, that would be a bit tougher to hand off. So anything stick up was really easy. My wall tablets went with me. Those were really easy. I just took them off the wall and I could patch the hole. And the Nova Stella stuff I had, all of my outdoor lighting that lit up my house, I did the video on, all of that stuff just worked as well and was removable. So things like that, great investments for home automation. And I will keep that in mind for anything I do in the future. The 5th thing I want to talk about is another positive, and that is that some of the infrastructure upgrades I did for my home automation did pay off and were valuable. And I did this on both house sales. One of them is a structured wiring cabinet and having Ethernet throughout the house. A lot of people, especially after COVID, are they're aware of what it's like to have to work from home or do something from home. And having Ethernet throughout the house has been really valuable, despite how fast Wi-Fi is. It's just something reliable about plugging in the wall and knowing that computer is going to be online with no hassle. That was great. I also, in my second house, I had some infrastructure upgrades. I'd gotten Fios and I had cable, and they ran it in such a way that it was capable of using both. So that was really great when the buyer came in and asked, like, hey, I'm on Fios. I'm like, okay, we're already wired for it. So any of those infrastructure things were bonuses. A couple other things, for whatever reason, smart doorbells. I had a Ring doorbell. I personally, again, I wouldn't use Ring myself again. I had the Ring doorbell set up and I asked them, do you want me to take that off? And they were like, no. And that worked out really well. I just decommissioned it off of my account. They decommissioned it on their account and they had a smart doorbell. So smart doorbells, for whatever reason, seem to transfer really well. The other one was some home automation that isn't necessarily smart home automation. I call it dumb home automation. Example is fan timers. If you have fan timers in the bathroom, that transferred really well. That was something that was kind of fun for them to see. And they were like, oh, it's a cool upgrade. And there was no technology or Wi-Fi or anything else around it. Some of those upgrades were really nice. Again, they're not going to pick my house over another house for it, but it was something that I could see made them smile and kind of got their head nodding. And that's really what you want when you're selling anything, is you want to hear more yeses. The 6th thing is a very simple thing, but it's something I think that we have to remember. If you're into home automation, you're almost in a sub-niche of a sub-niche of technical people. Not everyone cares or wants technology in their house. And that's hard for me to say because I love technology in my house. But the reality is some people buying the house, they not only may not care, they don't want what it is. And the thing is, you're selling a house, you have to hand the house off. And I was very proud of my house. I'd fallen in love with the things I had done. And so it kind of hurt to think that some of the people that might buy it, they either would never use the technology I put in there or would actively undo it or rip it out. And the thing is, you're selling a house and you have to let it go and you have to walk away from it. And that can be hard. The other thing is the person that moves in, there's no connection with them, right? Like they're not your friend. They're not a business partner even. They're somebody that is going to live in the place that you called home. And you have to be able to walk fully away from that emotionally and everything. And if they don't care about technology, that's okay. That was something that was hard for me is because there were a couple of people that were coming in and I was like, they're going to rip apart things I spent hours on, or they just don't care. And not only do they not care, some of them really, really dislike it. Now, everyone's got their comfort level of, things with the cloud and so on. I'm somebody that uses Amazon devices and I'm comfortable with that. But some people will not have a smart speaker in their home. And I respect that. I totally get it. I get the privacy. I get where they're coming from and I respect it and I value that. But that's important too. If you're like, well, I have a bunch of smart switches and they use the Amazon and Google ecosystem and everyone uses that, right? No. A lot of people, not only don't they not use it, they don't want it in their house at all. So it's not a thing of they don't use it and they will go discover this magic that you're bringing them. They want no part of it. And so that's important to understand. You can't use an ecosystem play to try to pull them in. So I guess the seventh thing I would add, but it's kind of an obvious thing if you're in a home assistant, but it's kind of like, well, can't you hand them a home automation system that you've set up on like Samsung or SmartThings or whatever? You can't, because it's like trying to pull somebody into an ecosystem that, when you go back to that list of like where home automation is on a list, it's pretty far down for most buyers. And telling them, yeah, and if you get an iPhone, you can do all this stuff. Or, if you get this Samsung account, you can do all this stuff. That's not where they want to be. Sadly, Home Assistant, I think, would have been an awesome thing to be able to provide, but it's not at a maturity level anywhere close where it could be given away like that. I couldn't build a cool home automation system around Home Assistant and say, here's your home automation thing, and it's super easy to use and it will work for the next 10 years. In respect, the first update, it would probably change the UI and break everything. I did think about it though. I was like, what would I be doing? And what I would be doing is signing myself up for tech support for the next 10 years. Okay, so what are the 3 takeaways? Reversible things are good if you're looking at selling. The second thing is, home automation is still an ecosystem play. It's still a advanced play, and it's not ready for prime time for handing off yet. So I would not look at it as something that can be handed off. The third thing is people are not looking for home automation. Their top 5 or even top 10 things that they're looking at for buying your house. Prioritize it and value it accordingly. And the last thing is understand that your time is very, very valuable when selling a house. So it may not be worth investing time to undo your home automation stuff that you've done. Try to get it up to code and then get the heck out of there. I hope that was useful and some information that is, out there. I was doing searches for YouTube videos to try to get some takes. I wasn't finding a lot out there. So I thought maybe I'll throw a video out there and let's see if it's helpful. Let's see what the feedback is. So if you leave me a comment, let me know if this was useful or not. And then also if you have any questions on this or my next topic, which is going to be what it's like when I bought a brand new house and what home automation things I did for that, let me know now, and then I can research those and get those answers into the next video. For now, I'm Joe Farrow. I'm glad to be back on the air, so to speak. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe Farrow at Geek Toolkit, and I'll see you next time.